With that, I wanted to introduce Leonora Florendo, Florendo. Otherwise, we know her as Lee. Lee was born and raised in Juneau, graduated from Juneau Douglas High School in 1964. She earned a bachelor's in administration in sociology from Harvard University in 1980. She had 2 specialties in education and race relations. This means that she took at least 2 classes at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and 2 classes from Professor Thomas Pettigrew dealing with race relations in the U.S. As the oldest daughter of Nora Marks Dauenhauer, Lee is half Filipino and half Tlingit. She grew up in the community where she and others like her were not accepted. They were not accepted by the Native community because they were half. They were not accepted by the Filipino community because they were not pure. Luckily for them, their Filipino community, luckily for them, their parents created a community for their children. A couple of other things, they like rice adobo and other exotic Filipino dishes, and dry fish, herring eggs, seagull eggs, berries, gumboots, and a lot of other native foods. While at Harvard, Lee was a single parent and a member of the older women students at Harvard. She did not attend any of the meetings. She didn't think she was old enough. Lee has worked for the Central Council of Klukwan Indian Tribes of Alaska for over 25 years. She has served on the Juneau Indian Studies and Johnson O'Malley Parent Boards, the Gold Belt Board of Directors, the Juneau Klukwan Community Council, and has been a member of the Juneau Alaska Native Sisterhood, otherwise known as ANS, Juneau Camp Number 2. She served as the Indian Child Welfare Program for over 18 years. It is in that capacity that Lee appears before us in the Clan Conference. She has worked with children and their families in Juneau. The information she presents relates to families in Juneau, but she believes that her discussion of disconnect can be applied universally to Alaska Native and American Indians, children, and their families who are involved in the state child protective systems across the nation. With that, please help me with a warm welcome for Lee.
Thank you. The title of my presentation today is, "It is time to share our knowledge with those who matter most, our children." My name is Lee Florendo. I'm the Indian Child Welfare Coordinator with the Tlingit and Haida tribes here in Juneau, Alaska. And my Tlingit name is Klukwan. I'm named for my mother's grandmother. My grandmother was Emma Marks, and my mother is Nora Dauenhauer. My name originates from Yakutat, at the Canoe Prow House, and I'm Klukwan, and I apologize, I don't have enough saliva, and hopefully I say it correctly, Gunaahu Kwan. My grandfather was Willie Marks from Huna. My father was Tony Florendo, who was born in La Union, Philippine Islands, and I am Tlingit Filipino. I've served as the Indian Child Welfare Coordinator with Tlingit and Haida for most of my professional life. I'm honored to be here today, really. I've not been able to attend past clan conferences because they were in Sitka, but seeing the flyer announcing the conference in Juneau, I had this need to share our program with everyone. Today, my discussion will be concerning the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, its impact on tribal children from Southeast Alaska, the need for help from tribal members, clans, and clan members, and the need to reconnect children and their families to clans. Again, I come to you here today as a tribal child welfare worker. I'm here because we need your help. And before I get to the serious stuff, I'd like to share a story about my sweet grandson, Gabriel. We were at my mother's house one day in the morning, and my Aunt Florence Shakely's grandchildren came up to the house, and they were proudly introducing themselves in Tlingit to my mother while she was sitting at the table. And my grandson had his elbow on the table and he was watching them. He's blonde and he has blue eyes. When they were finished, he leaned his elbow on the table and he speaks with a lisp. And he says, "Oh yeah, my name is Kookitaan and I'm a Klukwan Yeti." And my mother laughed and she says, "Gee, sounds like we're a clan of chickens." But he had the idea. The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 is also called PL 95608. In 1978, Congress acknowledged that there is no resource that is more vital to the continued existence and integrity of Indian tribes than their children. How many of you are familiar with the Indian Child Welfare Act? Raise of hands. Oh, good. Great. I hope I'm not going to bore you. The minimum federal standards established by the Indian Child Welfare Act pertain to the involuntary removal of children from their families, placement preferences, notice requirements, evidentiary standards that states have to meet. ICWA does not apply to custody disputes between parents. These standards have to be met by states whenever they intend to remove a child or to continue placement of a child in state custody. It applies when children are removed involuntarily from their parents, they're placed in foster care, and the parents cannot have the child returned upon demand. The placement preferences, the orders of preferences as they're called, for adoption, it's with a member of the child's extended family, a member of the tribe, or a member of another Indian tribe. Foster care placements are different, but basically the same. First order of preference is with a extended family member. Second is a foster home licensed, approved, or specified by the tribe. Third is a foster home licensed or approved by a tribe or operated by an approved or authorized by a non-Indian licensing authority. And the fourth order of preference is an institution for children approved by the tribe or operated by an Indian organization, which has a program suitable to meet the needs of the Indian child. When the state knows that an Indian child is a matter of is a subject of removal, notice is supposed to be provided to the parents, the custodians, and the Indian child's tribe. To remove a Native child from the parents, the evidentiary standard to meet is clear and convincing. To terminate parental rights to an Indian child, the evidentiary standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. And the state must show that it has made active efforts to correct the parents' behavior, but that all efforts have failed. In order to apply the Indian Child Welfare Act, The child must be a member of the tribe or be eligible for membership, and the child's parent must be an enrolled tribal member. I should tell you that there are many young parents born after December 17th, 1971 are not enrolled tribal members. While this might pose a problem to some tribes, Tlingit and Haida is able to enroll children as long as we have a family ancestry chart that ties the child to an enrolled tribal member. Whoops. The Tlingit and Haida ICWA program serves 7 tribes in Southeast Alaska. We serve Skagway, Haines, Juneau, Wrangell, Craig, Klukwan, and Saxman. We also have the resolution to provide Indian child welfare services to Tlingit and Haida members of Alaska Corporation and Tlingit and Haida members of the 13th region. The Southeast Alaska tribes that are not listed here administer their own Indian child welfare programs. Tell me if I'm getting too monotone. I hate it when people get monotone, and I'm trying to be animated with a camera filming. Our first job as the child welfare workers is to make sure that states apply the minimum federal standards that appear in ICWA. We represent the tribe's interests in the child. This is a political relationship that we have with the child as a tribal member. Parents are entitled to attorneys under the Indian Child Welfare Act, and if they can't afford one, the court will appoint an attorney to represent their interests. We participate in court hearings, we provide case management services to families, and we work with states to ensure they comply with the minimum federal standards. We are not attorneys, nor do we have the funds in our program to hire attorneys to represent our interests. But we do have an agreement. Tlingit and Haida Central Council has an agreement with the state of Alaska that we signed in 1991 that allows us to participate in court hearings involving our tribal children. And there's a recent Supreme Court decision, Alaska Supreme Court decision, that allows tribal representatives to appear in court, Indian child welfare proceedings. That said, many parents, many Native parents in Juneau are unable to navigate systems here. They are not connected to the support systems that might help them. They may be involved in activities that place their children at risk or in harm's way, or they're not able to keep their children safe. And I'm limiting my discussion to Juneau. And I need to state that many families are not familiar with the important differences in living in a small, supportive community and the challenges that many families face when they move to larger urban areas. And Juneau is such a thriving community, isn't it? Most important part of our job is to locate appropriate relative placements for tribal children. We must work with parents to identify and locate potential family placement resources, and ICWA does not discriminate between Native and non-Native relatives of a child. The non-Native part is part of the non-Native side of the child is part of that child's culture also. However, parents are not providing us with the information they need. Sometimes they don't want their families to know that they need help. Sometimes they don't want a particular family member to serve as a placement resource for whatever reason. And sometimes they don't know who might be available to help them. When this happens, children are placed outside the family and outside the clan. So I give my apologies at the beginning. My intention is to share information. I'm not here to offend anyone. What I'm saying may be controversial and may not sit well with some, but we're trying to get attention from clan leaders and clan members present. We need help from everyone. Tlingit and Haida families are at risk. Disproportionate numbers of Native children in child welfare and juvenile justice systems in Alaska and outside indicate that our families are at risk. Clans are not generating culture or transmitting culture to younger generations. Children are not being named at birth. Some parents don't have names, and some parents don't know what their clans, who their clans are. The values transmitted through clan connections are not being passed on. I'm getting this information from our children, our parents, our Indian child welfare workers, Tlingit and Haida workers, teachers in the schools. But don't be surprised, but many of our parents and children who come to Tlingit and Haida do not have Indian names. Their families are at risk because isolation in the larger cities is a very real problem. Native families become the focus of attention by Children's Protective Services and the juvenile justice systems, and it's tough being Native in Juneau. You should know that most referrals to child protection services across the nation are made by police, schools, and medical personnel. I was born and raised in Juneau. I graduated from Juneau High School. I've waited in line in stores that served non-natives before me, even though I was there first. My beautiful and exceptionally intelligent children and grandchildren, and we all think this of our children, and they're lucky that we think this, but they've been ignored in schools, and they're not performing as they should. My kids didn't, except my daughter. She said she was an overachiever, but my grandchildren are having trouble in school. The Tlingit and Haida caseload. We average 250 cases a year, and we have 3 workers. 2/3 of our ICWA caseload includes children in other states. The other third is in Juneau and Southeast Alaska, and we have several cases in Anchorage. As of December 31st, we had 229 children on our caseload. 88 of the children were in Juneau, 88 children were out of state, 35 children were in Anchorage, and 18 children were in other Southeast Alaska communities. On the issue of disproportionality, as of February 2009, in Juneau, Alaska, 11.4% of the 30,737 Juneau population are Alaska Native or American Indian. 71%, or 103 of the total 145 Juneau foster care population, are Tlingit and Haida children. Disproportionality is the relationship between the number of children in foster care as compared to the general population. More ICWA statistics or facts. Our children remain in foster care longer than non-Native children. In 2008, there were 73% of children in foster care in Juneau. Most of the Native children in foster care are placed with non-Natives, and most of the children will be adopted out. Our ICWA caseload indicates that tribal families are suffering from the effects of boarding schools, wars, state and federal regulations, removal of children from their families by the BIA and states, relocation programs, alcoholism, and other substance abuse. This is my interpretation of multi-generational or intergenerational terms in terms of our ICWA program. where young children were removed from their communities and families to boarding schools so that they could be westernized, had an impact on the transmission of culture from one generation to the next. The children were disconnected at critical times in their development, and they were not the same when they returned home, if they returned home. Transmission of culture and traditions became haphazard, and that haphazardness is evident today in our ICWA statistics. In 2001, the Child Welfare League of America publicly apologized to American Indians and Alaska Natives at a National Indian Child Welfare Association meeting in Anchorage. The Child Welfare League of America admitted that through an agreement with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA removed children from their families, and the Child Welfare League of America placed them with non-natives in the lower 48. And I'm quoting the president, who at that time admitted that children were being rescued from their own cultures and families. Again, the haphazard transmission of culture and tradition is evident in our statistics relating to the reasons for removal. There's a lot of alcoholism and substance abuse and dysfunction in families on our caseload. Children are being removed from their families because their families cannot or are not able to keep them safe. What is disconnect? Generations of Tlingit and Haida families have become isolated from their clans and their families. They've suffered from the systems created to help them. Are you aware that America's child protection systems used as their model for child welfare matters the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals? That's their model. What else is the disconnect? Generations of Tlingit and Haida families have become isolated, again, from their clans and families. Oh, geez, I showed that already, didn't I? They've become, the third bullet is they've become lost souls in a predominantly white systems that don't understand their culture. Their way of life is threatened by the child protection system, and we are losing our children to non-native homes. We are not sharing our knowledge. Young people are not learning life's lessons that come through storytelling. We talk about how aunties and uncles were involved in the raising of the children as if it were an ideal. We talk about the way it used to be. Young people as Alaska Natives are lost in today's world. Children are not being told their stories. They're not learning the significance from their parents or grandparents of memorials and ceremonies that define who we are and how we are related to one another. They're not learning how clan or community values that have perpetuated through previous generations. They're not learning the traditions that have been passed from one generation to the next, and they're not learning how special it is to be a member of the clan. And so, what is the contradiction here? While many children on our caseload do not have Tlingit or Haida names, they don't know if they're eagle or raven, they don't know what clan they are, they don't know what their crest is. White people are being adopted by clans. For what purpose? Especially when not all of our children have Indian names. This is a great arena to address this contradiction. When we come together to gatherings like these, we hear what it used to be like. We hear an idealized recollection of being Tlingit or Haida. We hear about our struggles to revive our languages. Again, we are not sharing our knowledge with the people who are most precious to us, our children. We hear about a great immersion program in Juneau that teaches school children the Tlingit language. Unfortunately, that program is in danger of closing down because of funding or lack of funding. But in this program, parents are not learning to speak Tlingit. How do we keep Tlingit language alive when only the children speak it and fluent Tlingit speakers are few? We also hear about the Tlingit language program at UAS that does not carry the same importance as the establishment of a women's program. We're in the middle of Tlingit country, folks. We hear of a Haida language program in Ketchikan that involves multi-generational family groups that could be replicated in other communities. And we hear of a Juneau program where children are responding to the curriculum question, who am I? And some don't know. This was developed by Alaska and in conjunction with the Juneau School District, and it is a culture and language thematic unit. This one is a kindergarten level. So, our collective challenge here is white people are being adopted when our children go without names that tie them to their clan, their community, and extended family. And anthropologists, where are you, Mom? Sorry. Know more about the origin of customs and traditions. Linguists, sorry, Dick, can speak the language better than our children and parents. And adopted clan members have names and regalia that rival our children's. And sometimes that reminds me of the hobbyists that I would see on the East Coast at powwows. Their gear was newer, their dancing style was really impressive, but the Indians called them hobbyists. So what are the losses that we are experiencing here? We are losing our children to non-native families. Children don't know who they are or where they belong. Culture, language, and clan values are not being passed on. And without a strong sense of pride, self and pride in being native, our children and their parents suffer. More devastating losses are being experienced by clans and Southeast Alaska tribes. I'm here today to ask for help from the conference. We need clan leaders and clan members to help families. We need them to help our children, and we need them to reconnect our children to the most important relationship that is the basis of Tlingit tradition. Clan membership. Our children and their families need your help. In the schools, you know, it's okay to sit in the classroom and observe teachers of our native students to see how they're treating them. Or you can tutor the children in school. Or you can go and talk about being native or a member of a clan. The children love it when you go to the school and they stick their chests out and they stand up taller. Our children and families need your help. In court hearings, it's okay for family members to attend court hearings when a child of the family is in court or the result is being removed or custody is being extended. It's okay to attend case staffings to serve as a resource as a family member of the parent, to help the parent or care for the children. and we need your help as foster care or relative placements for children. We are in dire need of tribal families that are willing and able to be licensed as relative or foster care placements for children. We need foster homes in Juneau. We need them in Anchorage. We need them in Seattle. We need them across the United States. And I know Tlingits and Haidas are across the United States. Let them know we need you. Our children and families need their help, need your help in their homes as you mentor parents in one area or another to help them along. As you tell children and their parents your stories. As you share your knowledge with your families. As you help them to be proud they are Native, when non-Native systems fool them into believing that being Native is not good in this community or any other. We need your guidance. To us, extended family includes appropriate clan members. We look first to the Native mother's side. We need guidance on where to look within the clan. We also need guidance on where to look outside the clan. We need to know whom to contact when a family is experiencing stress. We need the names of appropriate relatives, aunties or uncles who can help them through crises. We need the names of those who know family trees and relationships for placement purposes. What can clan leaders do? You can make sure that a clan member in the community is keeping track of your families and the children. Clan leaders can encourage grandparents, aunties, and uncles to share their knowledge with their children and their parents. What can clan leaders do? Tlingit and Haida ICWA program is working on including clan names from Andy Hope's poster in our family case files. Is this okay with everyone? And how do we check? What else can clan leaders do? They can encourage families, especially when they move from the smaller communities, to keep in touch with grandparents, parents, and clan relatives. And I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but usually when a young family comes to Juneau, they are better connected to their clans and their families and the cultures and traditions from their communities than those of us who grew up in Juneau. What can clans do? They can provide tribal ICWA programs with the names of clan leaders or members who can serve as expert witnesses at child protection hearings. They can give us names of clan leaders or members who can coach or mentor parents, or can serve as community resources at the Alaska Office of Children's Services. What is the most important thing that clans can do? You can engage our children by sharing your knowledge with them, showing them by example what it means to be a clan member, telling them how precious they are to us. Show them that you cherish them when they need a placement. What else can clans do? You can help us to do what needs to be done to give the children names. If we knew of families' clan origin or origins, is there a way that we could have clans give children names and their parents too, if they don't have one? What is appropriate in this instance? Yes, we do need your knowledge. I am here shamelessly asking you for help. Our families are disintegrating. Our clans are losing their futures. Our tribes are losing potential leaders who will make us proud. and we need your help too. Because as Congress acknowledged in passing the Indian Child Welfare Act in 1978, that our children are the most vital resource to Indian tribes, 30 years later, Tlingit and Haida tribes is here to remind everyone, and I paraphrase, there is no resource that is more vital to the continued existence and integrity of Indian clans than their children. Our children need your knowledge, your wisdom, your strength to bring them back to the protection of the clans. And you need your children to carry on the language and traditions that are being shared at this conference. I hope I've not offended anyone. I thank you for your kind attention. Again, I'm here because our families need your help. And I'm here because the Tlingit and Haida Tribes ICWA program needs your help. I thank you. Gunakchish and Hawa. Thank you. I did not. Thank you. I didn't provide an opportunity, although I have stickums on here where I said, anybody have any questions? You'll notice I didn't stop. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
In accordance to your removal of children from homes, you have a statute of limitations and guidelines that you follow?
No. Statutes and guidelines that we follow?
Yes.
Tlingit and Haida or state?
Anything to do with the removal of a native child, because I myself know a lot of children who've been in the system for years.
Yeah, okay. What we follow when we operate our Indian Child Welfare Program are the Indian Child Welfare Act, the Adoption Safe Families Act, the Federal Adoption and Safe Families Act, and the Indian Child Protection and Family Violence Act, and we also have to follow state law. We have to follow Alaska law or whatever law of the state the child resides in. Does that answer your question? Sorry. Could you be more specific?
Also, I want to encourage, because we're videotaping this, is that we go ahead and repeat the question
Okay.
for the purposes of the audio,
Okay,
and also for courtesy to the audience.
okay. Would you please repeat the question?
More elaborate. What is the statute of limitations? When you take a child out of a home, how much time are you allotted to get this child back into the home?
In Alaska,
Okay, repeat the question, please.
what are the statute of limitations? And what was the end of it again?
How much time do you have to reunite this child?
Oh, okay, thank you. And how much time do they have to reunite the child with place the child back in the home? Okay.
In the meantime, the child is going from foster home to foster
Right, right. Okay. Well, in Alaska, we have to follow state and federal law. And the Adoption and Safe Families Act requires the state of Alaska to develop a permanent plan for a child once the child has been in custody for 15 consecutive months. The child has been in placement for 15 consecutive months. And that permanent plan must be developed by the end of 12 months. So that Adoption and Safe Families Act really cut down the time that we're allowed when we're trying to assist a family to get their children back. It's very short, and it's governed by federal law.
Thank you, Flo. I'd like to encourage people to come to the microphone. I apologize, we don't have one out on the floor, but there's one over there. I don't know if it's up and running, though. So it's simpler to come forward, sir. So please come forward when you have a question. It'll help with the people who are in the audience to hear the question. And also, we're, as a courtesy to videotaping it, they would be able to hear this in decades to come. And also, another courtesy, please introduce yourself. Bertha?
I'm Bertha Karras from Sitka, and the question I have is, I have a niece that had 2 children out of wedlock, and the family separated, and I noticed that you did help some people out of state, and my niece is out of state, and she went to court trying to win her grandchildren, and she told them about the Indian Welfare Child Act, that she should have the children because their father was white. And they said, we don't honor that in our court. And this was in Indiana. And so I tried to tie her in with people up here, and we couldn't get any help. So as a result of it, she lost one of the children. She was able to keep one, but, and I was just alerted by the help you folks gave to people out of state.
Okay. So was this a custody dispute between the mother and the father, or was the state involved?
The state was involved.
Indiana. Well, as far as I know, ICWA applies across the land.
That's what I told them, but they didn't know anything about it in that court system. Thank you for your time, and your program is
real
very
sorry.
informative.
Real sorry about that.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Elaine Shorty, and I'm Inland Tlingit from Canada. My question is what sort of programs does your department have in place to assist the families to keep their children?
We have a prevention and early intervention program where there's 2 separate stages in it. If we receive a referral from OCS that a family needs assistance before they, or else they will remove the child, we have a Preserving Native Families program. We also have a Preserving Native Families program where we receive referrals from the tribal TANF, temporary assistance to Native families. Well, the workers will refer families to us if a family is not ready to focus on work-related activities. The federal government acknowledged that not all families on TANF are ready to go to work. They have other issues that are happening in their lives that they may need some help on, so that's what our program does. We also offer Powerful Families. It's a money management type program, and we offer Positive Indian Parenting, and we offer, Francine, what's the other one? Oh, Wellbriety, White Bison program for adults, and we have Sons and Daughters of Tradition that we offer to youth.
Hawa for your continued work in ICWA.
Thank you.
And Jackson, my sister-in-law, sends her best regards.
Oh, good.
I'm Mike Jackson. My Tlingit name's Kaush. I'm from the Kachari clan in Kake. And working directly with children in our village has been a journey in regard to wellness and sobriety that we have to remind. I was embarrassed by your talk, so I stepped up here to say that we offer our only way of dealing with families with children is try to talk from the heart. In our small community of Cake, there's 550 residents. There's probably more Cake residents here in Juneau and Anchorage put together than there are now. They just moved out. Over 400 of them in the last 4 years. But for the last 10 years, our organized village of Cake has been working with me. I have 23 years in with the state working as a magistrate and engineer, but 20 years into district court magistrate. After 10 years of working in that, after seeing the revolving door of our own people in our own little village, it came to me, the challenge from my father, a challenge from my grandfather, Kookitaan, Johnny C. Jackson, and my father, Thomas L. Jackson Sr., that we have to step up as a people. We cannot wait for the federal government. We've been doing that for the last 200 years, huh? Look at the people that organized this doing here for the third time. Look at how many of you have come and how many would like to have come. But we have to take it upon our own self, our own clan houses, in our own village, to stop the exodus of our children out. So for the past 10 years, as a member of the Cake Circle Peacemaking, the lady from Inland, we bring down a man named Harold Gaddensby, Philip Gaddensby, Mark Wedge, Judge Barry Stewart, a retired federal judge up in Whitehorse. They've been using the concept of Tlingit circle peacemaking. It's just a little fingernail tip, like I was taught in Cake by my grandfather and my father, of talking from the heart, of talking from our life experiences. Before children and before young parents get into trouble. By state law, I have to go by a big bunch of state statute, big blue books. By federal law, Lee has to go by the federal statutes. But that's after they get in trouble. If we step in there now, this is where I was embarrassed and called a challenge by this lady, that we have to step up ourselves. We never went around and said we're doing this in Cake. But people in Harvard heard about us. The Supreme Court justices in the state heard about us. We invited everybody, the state government, the T&H, the Federal Bureau of People, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, to come to the first workshop we did about community restorative justice. White Bison came to Cake to find out what we were doing. They heard about us from down south. Now we've had everybody from around, mostly most of the people down south, and from all the way up as far as Barrow, Kotzebue, Kookitaan, to come to a workshop that we've been doing. And it's just a 3-4 day workshop on learning how to talk from the heart, to try to intervene with our own families. The state and federal government will say, you can't participate because you're related. Who knows better than the mother, the auntie, the uncle, the grandparents about what's wrong with him, the history of him, the clan history of him. See, we're a clan conference, we're clannish people. The tradition was that you answered to the grandmother when you went back into the tribal house, huh? You might be a big man, you might be a big leader, but you're only a servant to your clan members. You're only a servant to your tribal community, your Kwan. You don't get up there and say, I did this and did that, but now we have to try to interject the core community values. That was the law of the land. Each Kwan had its own. We didn't try to go and turn their life around for them. It was our own house, our own tribal house, our own Kwan. Now we have to work and intervene before Lee sees a case. As the organized village of Cake, we're what's called a compact tribe. We handle all our own programs. We had to step up, even part-time people, to work over time to try to get our tribe back on track. We still aren't, but we're going to call to our elders here to share those healing words from the heart, to share the peacemaking that they do in their own families, to share it with everybody. And I challenge this clan conference to be hiring the experts, our elders, in the area of social services next time, to address the sharing of our knowledge to our own clan members, to our own community, to make it a strong community again. And you look at the Tlingit intellectual people here and the experience that you might have to guide us along in these areas, I swear we'd be starting to, our language, the kids will come back as strong as they have been in the way you all are. You're all miracles to be sitting here. For the past 200 years, what have our ancestors gone through to get us here? And that's a challenge, to come back and get those values like what Dr. Walter Sobolov has had talked to us about over 100 years. To get our law of the land back into ourselves. Once you settle that with the young children that are coming up now, that you nicely put down on a PowerPoint, the culture and language will fall into place itself with strong young children that have learned to talk from their heart in a good way, in a spiritual way. That's one thing my court never addresses in the state level. I'm not saying that it's bad, but there's a separation of state and religion. But guess what? When people turn themselves around, they grasp onto the spirituality of their culture. They can't learn enough about it. Or non-native, or our own people, turn to religion. Because we know there's a bigger power up there, the Kookitaan Kau, Solana. But just turning people to turn that corner toward who they are. Each of our children are born with that seed in them, that appetite for our culture that will lead us, make future leaders of them, if we can settle them down.
Yep.
Goodness chiefly,
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
was embarrassed, but goodness cheesh, how,
Thank you.
We were very anxious for the children to be returned to the parents, so we asked the caseworker, when can these children be returned to the parents? And he answered in one word, never. And they weren't criminals, they had a home, and there was really no reason why they couldn't have had their children back. So there's a conflict here, but what you're saying and what they told us
Right.
about
Well-
foster children.
State social workers usually come from a different place. And what they see as bad behavior is not necessarily bad behavior when we look at it. And state workers have policies and procedures that they follow that sometimes keep our children away from their parents.
I know it's in this world, this kind of world, things are really reversed, you know, because in the storybooks, the parents and the children go to visit their grandparents, and then they take the children and go back home. But that's not so in this kind of world. The parents come to visit, and they go home, and the children stay with the grandparents. So it just, I don't think the system really works towards having families stay together.
No, it doesn't.
That's not what they want.
No, and that's why we try to be involved early on, and that's why we try to locate relative placements if necessary early on. Thank you.
Good morning to all the elders and to the coastland brothers and sisters. My native name is Dayak. I'm a clan leader for the Crows, Kookitaans in Atlin BC. I'm also a commercial fisherman on the Taku. I've been there for about over 20 years, kind of like what our ancestors have been doing. It was riding on my grandfather's back, making a living off of what I do, catching fish. I've been a clan leader for about 10 years, and I watched my my small nation struggle because what this lady has been saying on how do we adopt our own people. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to hurt anybody here, non-natives or anybody else here, but I have two daughters that has been seeking out on how to get adopted. Because in our First Nation, some of us are double crows and double wolves. And my daughters have been asking on how do we identify and give them a crest and give them directions where they need to go. Because time is going on. And them kids that were kids are now adults. And they still don't got their crest. They still don't got an identity on which way they got to travel in this life. But yet, they still do pretty well what I do. Is I'm a commercial fisherman, and they're right alongside of me as well. In order to give them strength, I'm asking, same thing with this form here, is try to find some kind of protocol where I can go back to my First Nation and try to give them some answers instead of waiting 5-10 years. Is a long time to give somebody an answer. And they've been asking about maybe 3 or 4 times. And we do come here for the Juneau celebration, and we participate quite a bit. But again, I know it's very important that we do resolve a lot of this stuff about how do we adopt people. Because again, in my First Nation, I do see non-native get adopted a lot easier than our own brothers and sisters. Even though we're both double crows, her mom is from the Yukon, northern part of the Yukon, and I'm from northern BC. So there's no two of the same blood, She's from a different band, but she's just from the same clan. I gotta get a drink of water. So this is some of the difficult situations I'm running into as a clan leader, and I just hope that we could try to get some kind of protocol and to bring back to our own First Nations so we could give them some kind of answers, because it's not just me who's suffering in this situation. I have a very hard time to get a Crow meeting together. Sometimes there's just 2 directors, and we need 10 people. And when we want to move forward with our nation, we need 10 people to do that. And out of 10 meetings for the whole year, I can't say we almost had any quorums at all. So at our JCMs, we do manage to meet the quorums, but still, there's still a lot of doubles out there that's not resolved. I'm just trying to find an answer. Thanks.
Thank you. Good luck.
My name is Willard Jackson from Ketchikan. My Tlingit name is Klukwan. I'm a Tontaquan Tequidi brown bear. Last year, I was up in Anchorage, and my daughter had given her kids to her dad to go to school, 3 of them. During that process, I had my youngest grandson with me. He's 3 years old today. I had him swept out of my hands at the doorstep by the police officers. My daughter had gone to jail for a domestic violence charge, which he was stabbed by this non-native gentleman. As a grandparent, I challenge every grandparent in this house. I'm coming up on 19 years of sobriety, and Mike was absolutely right. A change happens to a man or a woman in that sobriety. Change happens. Everything happens to you. My father, Milton Jackson, was from Klukwan. He raised 5 of us boys under his household. And he raised us properly. Saying that, it took a challenge for me. My 4 grandchildren are at my house today. They're staying with me, the 4 grandchildren. And I had to give every one of them a cell phone. It wasn't for them to talk to their friends. It was for them to talk to their grandpa. That's me. And every day I get a call from the 6-year-old grandson of mine who lost his father. He died. And I had to tell my grandson, Daniel, that I am now your dad. I'm your father. I'll be that father role. I'm a grandmother sometimes. I play the grandmother's role too. I'm the uncle sometimes, and I'm the auntie. I love my children very much. I love my grandchildren, all 11 of them. My son, George Jackson, works for T&H in Sitka, and he has 5 daughters, 5 beautiful daughters, and 3 of them through your program. He has his children and his daughters living with him. He said this one time a year ago. We were at Andy's memorial service in Sitka, and this is what my son said, George. He was speaking on behalf of the Eagle Nest House. It's an honor to be here on behalf of the Eagle Nest House. I have 5 females at home. It's an honor to be here. He says, even my dog's female. I'm real happy to be here. He is now getting his boat ready for the herring egg season. And he's a wonderful father. And what he asked me this morning was, the kids in that area are on spring break. And this is what he said to me this morning. I promised my daughters I'd take them on a boat ride, Dad, but the weather's blowing. And all I could tell him was, stay inside the harbor, son. Take them on their boat ride, but take them in the harbor. My grandson is 3 years old, the youngest one. And I can hear him in the background when I talk to my daughter today. Papa, Papa. He wants to talk to Papa. I'm grateful for the T&H program. Lee, I'm really proud that you brought this topic out. It's one we used to sweep under the rug. We'd sweep it underneath there and hope it would go away. It's not going to go away. I used to work the domestic violence program for KIC along with Sitka, and this was a challenge by lower 48 people on the reserves when the domestic violence program was brought to Ketchikan and Sitka. This is what a judge told us in Portland. I challenge those delegates from Sitka, Alaska, and Ketchikan to move forward with your domestic violence program. Bill Clinton put this program in place in 1980, and what he stated was, stop domestic violence against Indian women. And then she went on to say, we're going to lose our children by the hundreds if not by the thousands. Ganchish.
Thank you.
My name is John Garcia. I'm from Seattle, Washington. My Tlingit name is Chuasa. I'm in the process right now of adopting my cousin's child. She's almost a year and a half now. And down there in the courts in Seattle, I'm sure you know that it's very inundated. And just about every time we go to a court case, we talk to our caseworker, we're told that the tribe's going to intervene. But nothing's happened.
Kookitaan Haida?
It's through Angoon. And so I guess I'm just wondering, and they're very hard to get a hold of. And so I'm just wondering if you can enlighten me into why we just keep getting told that somebody's going to intervene, somebody's
Okay.
going to intervene, and
Okay.
nothing happens.
I can contact the worker over there. He's new. Matt Kukesh? Al Kukesh Jr. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome all the elders here that came from Alaska, all over Yukon, Atlin, and all. I want to say this much. I'm really happy to be here with all the people and to understand our Indian culture in a good way. I just wanted to tell you about how I was taught our culture from the Taku River. So your people will, in Alaska will know how we can put our strong culture together in a good way with the elder people. And the way it is, I was educated in Tlingit ways of the Taku River clan system. And when I was taught, my grandpa, Billy Williams, everybody knows him in Alaska, long time ago. But you know, as we went on, we lost a lot of our elders that was here before us. And to tell you the truth, when I learned about my grandfather told me about the history of the Taku River and the clan system, I was very happy and I was very glad to learn. When I was born in Atlin, they took me down Taku River when I was only about 6 months old, not even that, I guess. They took me down and I grew up at Taku River. And when I grew up at Taku River, I met some white friends of mine in the Tulsa mine. And I tried to talk to them in Tlingit language and they didn't understand me. So, and when they talked to me in English language, I couldn't understand them either because I didn't know how to talk English. And I'm very glad to be here because the way I am, I'm a man of age up to just about coming close to 80 years old. And so I want to share everything I learned with you people so we'll be strong together. And in our culture, the grandpa said, doesn't matter who it is, as long as he walks like this, he's a human being and respect him. And that's the way I look at everybody now, because us First Nation people were a long ways from the way our great-grandfathers handled things. But there's no problem if we go together the right way and respect one another. I think we're going to go a long ways for the young generation. And what I'm after is to teach the young generation as strong ways I can of our culture, how to work together and how to respect one another. And the thing is here, we're just like what I said yesterday, the fish swim like this all the way up to where it was born, and that's what we want to do. We want to imitate the fish or the animals the way they used to do a long time ago. And so this is why I use the fish, how the fish swim back to where it was born. And to tell you the truth, right now, I have some family that's in Atlin, and they really want to learn about the culture, and And I think the way the young people asked me here yesterday, some of the young people here really wants to learn the cultural way. And it's going to be strong, but the way we're going to do things is the Indian ways, as making an offer to motherland and tell them thank you for everything, you know. So we can learn how to be strong on what we call Mother Earth here. And it wasn't for Mother Earth, we wouldn't be the way we are now. The Alaska people and everybody really enjoy life together in a good way with their family. And we want to call ourselves a big family of Alaska and Canadian side and all over Yukon, because long time ago our great-grandparents didn't have no borderlands that we have to go under, like the Yukon border, BC border, Alaska border. But let's put things together the way it is now, Alaska border, Yukon border, BC border, and start putting ourselves together to work off a strong way so we can teach the young generation our best knowledge of our Tlingit ways of respecting one another, to be strong together. I tell you right now, we got a big, powerful, strong government. We call it Clan System government. It's a strong one. But we got to balance that with Mother Earth and the belief in Mother Earth's ways of going. So we got to just balance it together so good as we can. But the way we're going here, we're off balance right now, and I think we can get it back to normal balance together in the strong ways of our culture-wise. This Mother Earth we got, you know, our Lord put it together for us, not to fight over it or not to argue over things. It's us to remember Mother Earth helped us to put this earth, to put us on her. We get medicine from the ground, we get fish from the ground, we get animals from the ground, we get everything. And we live off the land we call Mother Earth. And this is why I want to tell the young generation now to respect our Mother Earth in a strong way of the Tlingit ways that we used to have before our white brothers came to our lives and everything. I'm not got nothing against the white people. I just call them white brothers because they're human just like us, and we're going to have respect for one another. We got to teach them our culture in a strong way to look after Mother Earth. What's that? I like to say this much. When my grandpa brought me down Taku River, and when I was 7 years old, he took me over, and I had to work with him, trap and everything. And when I was 9 years old, I shot my first moose. And when I shot my first moose, I was really happy. I was thinking, boy, I'm a great man, and we're going to be a man now. And the year after that, I was 10 years old, and I shot my first grizzly bear. And my grandpa taught me all that. And I thought really good of my grandpa because he was a strict man, but he was really understandable. Now, what he taught me was really great. And this is what I want to teach the people of the young generation, as strong as I can, of our Indian culture ways, and to believe our culture. We have to believe our culture to get along with Mother Earth in the right way, because that's the way our great-grandfathers did it before our time came. So let's carry this on for the young generation and work together as elders. What I like to see happen here, I like to see us elder people get together, because some of our elders are well educated in the white man system. It's good. And like myself, I'm not educated in the white man's reading and writing, but a little bit, not very much. But still, we can hold hands and work together in a strong way, because not the eldest people that didn't learn our culture in a strong way is not their fault, but it's not too late for them to learn in a good way. and to hold hands together and work together is the First Nation government of the clan system government, and for the young generation to start learning our culture, because clan system government was there from a long time ago. So this is a thing that I want to talk about a little bit, and I want to say this much for the people in Atlin, like the Crow Clan, the Frog Clan. There's a big boulder in Atlin, a real big one, and there's lots of carving done on that boulder. And you know very well, long time ago, the native people didn't have no cold chisel to carve that rock out on a boulder. So the way I look at it, they use power, Indian power, to go and carve that rock out. And it's well carved out, and this is the thing that it's sitting there on the shore of Atlin Lake, and everybody looks at it, and the carving's all on there. There's a bunch of carving on that boulder. So this is the thing I'm trying to tell you, that Indian people long time ago had Indian power they call Indian doctor. So Indian doctor what had something to do with his power of this carving rock out, because there was no cold chisel them days that they carved that rock out. And what we want to find out for now is how old that rock is that's carved out on Atlin Lake shore. And these things like this we can share together, so you can understand that the native people had power, and where our clan system government come from, it was from the old people a long time ago, and there's a lot of power right there, but we're going to handle it the right way together to understand one another, not to try to beat one another. And I say this much, when my grandpa taught me the clan system government, the clan system way of looking at the Mother Earth and the people, everything connects together. And I see where my great-grandpa really did good. And I used to remember when he used to come to Juneau, Alaska, all the elders used to get together and to tell stories to one another, just like in Atlin, the same thing. To tell stories to one another and to laugh and have lots of fun, you know. And this is what I see of our good life long time ago. And with that, I would say, God bless you people, and please look at it. Let's try to get that smiling at one another and holding hands together and work as strong as we can together. With that, I thank you all for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Flo, a little housekeeping. I know Rob is going to have a quick say. We have to transition fairly soon into the next session. Before we do that, two items. One is, I know this isn't my watch because I didn't buy a pink one. Plus, it looks like it's too small for my wrist. Here's a little child's watch, a pink watch. So if you know of someone who is a child that belongs to this watch, we have it up here. And second housekeeping item, there was a typo in your program. The next session that's going to be in this ballroom is name giving and adoptions. It says Harold Jacobs is supposed to be in ballroom number 1, but he's not. He will be right here in ballroom number 3. The other two are correct. There's ballroom number 1 and ballroom number 2. Those sessions are as planned, but Harold Jacobs, his name giving and adoptions, will be right here in this ballroom. Rob, introduce your name, please.
You okay? Rob Sanderson, Jr., Ketchikan Indian Community Tribal Council member. Lee, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I took a couple of notes here on your presentation and on some of the thoughts that people were sharing here this morning. First, I would like to talk about the father role that we play with our children. Not once have I heard this morning on what the present-day father does for their children. I say that we speak about what we're doing for our grandfather and for our father, but nobody spoke of what the father, the present-day father, does today. They play a very key role in what their children do. I'm a single parent. I'm a single father. I bring this up because it is so very crucial that we push and do everything that we can to empower the fathers of our children. We're not talking about our present-day fathers here. We need to incorporate that in our language. As a father of a beautiful 11-year-old boy, I do everything I can to empower him to have a very powerful mind, because he's going to need that to go into this world as we move along. So we need to remember that as we speak of what our grandfathers want us and what our fathers want us to do. Well, let's involve the present-day father, because they are such a huge part of that kid's life. I'd also like to bring up the fact that, Lee, in your presentation, that you talked of poverty in the village. Well, I would not choose to call that poverty. I would call that a lack of opportunity. We live in a very diverse and rich part of the world where we don't have to call it poverty. If we want, we know the clans, the cultures we talk. We're not incorporating what we really should be teaching our children too, is that how to live off the land. In my book, there's no such thing as poverty in the villages, and that's just my opinion.
You're right.
And
Thank you.
I would also like to say one more thing, Lee, is that you are so right about giving out names to non-native people when my boy don't even have a name. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being attentive and not getting up and walking out on me. I would have been crushed. Oh, thank you. That's it.